Phil, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Greg, thanks for having me this evening.
Lake Lithium is positioned to provide lithium to the rapidly growing North American EV and battery market. Let's start with a brief overview of your business and the customers you serve.
So we're not yet in the extraction point of our process, but we're hopefully approaching that rapidly within the next 24 to 36 months. The customers are basically everyone who has a car. There's 1.4 billion automobiles in the global automobile fleet, and those are all being electrified. Like I said, we're not at a point now where we're talking about this concept of electrification conceptually. This is a reality today. The consumer today no longer has to compromise on luxury or economics to drive an electric vehicle. Today, the electric vehicles are competitive and perhaps more so. So all the 287 million drivers of automobiles in the United States, throw in another, 30 million in Canada. Those are potentially our customers ultimately, and that's going to be obviously provided by the automobile manufacturers and the battery manufacturers. But that's where we see the growth.
You just mentioned 1.4 billion drivers in the world. Let's get into some more details about this market opportunity. Just how big is it?
I would say from spending an entire career in the mining and the markets that are aligned with the natural resources, I don't think there ever has existed. I think what we're looking at is an unprecedented systemic disconnect and dysfunction between the supply and demand matrix in the commodity sector, specifically with regard to the lithium. What the ambitions and the intentions of the governments and the manufacturers are, and with regard to electrification over the next decade, the raw materials just don't exist today to sustain those goals. And sure, we're going to find ways to innovate. We're quite an innovative species, but the question is, where is it going to come from, and how are we going to be able to maintain the growth that we're looking at?
Phil, you mentioned 3, 5, so many years in the future. One of these days, there's going to be full electrification of the whole auto fleet. The electrification of the auto industry being well underway even now. What is Snow Lake Lithium doing to revolutionize this industry and reach that full potential of decarbonization? Sure.
So what we're seeing at the moment, I think, is there's about 10 million electric vehicles on the road today, out of the total fleet, like I mentioned, 1.4 billion. But that growth, those numbers are, we're looking at a 40–50% year-on-year growth. And we're kind of, I think we're over the falls there, and we're cascading now into this tsunami of potential with regard to, the electrification. Our role in that is that ultimately we're very focused on the North American market. North America is a little bit behind certainly as far as China is concerned, and certainly as far as parts of Europe are concerned. But the North American market ultimately is going to wake up to this reality, and we will see a tsunami in the very near future. So in terms of Snow Lake's role is that right now today, there is no supply, or virtually no supply in North America of lithium or hydroxide, for the industry. We are geographically in the perfect location. Our proximity to the North American markets and our access to it via rail and our existing infrastructure puts us in a position where theoretically we could be from our mine site to downtown Detroit in a day and a half. So we could, we have full access. We have the power, a clean energy, renewable energy source with hydro power provided by the Manitoba province. So we see ourselves ultimately playing an incredibly strategic role as this thing develops and matures over the next 24, 36 months, and then literally up, for the next 20, 30 years as the market continues to electrify.
Phil, you mentioned geographical proximity being an advantage for your company. What are some of the other differentiators separating you from all those other lithium miners?
Well, I think a primary differentiator is our power source. We are blessed with the fact that being in Manitoba is a hydro-powered state. So we have access to a 98% renewable energy source. And the fact is that if you are in this space and you are looking towards electric vehicles, your philosophy is such that you want your raw materials to be congruent with that. And we are able to provide that. Additionally, we have the rail, as I mentioned earlier. The rail gives us access to the entire United States network, where we can effectively be anywhere in that region within a day and a half. We are also very fortunate in the fact that we are in a very heavily mining cultured zone. So, Canada is a mining friendly country, but Manitoba is an extremely supportive mining friendly province. So if you look at our proximity, north, south, east, west, it's all mining. The economy is sustained by mining. So that really helps us a lot in terms of the talent base, the talent pool that we have to we can draw on, and also the support that we are receiving, and we continue to build on cultivating these relationships with the municipal and the provincial government. So I think that's incredibly important. And I'd say finally also is the fact that we're going for the B Corp status. We're going to go, we're applying for a B Corp status. I think it's important that within the mining industry today, and the extractive industries in general, there's a lot of talk about ESG, but we're looking to actually walk that walk, and we're going to verify that in a credible fashion to establish credentials that say, hey, we've achieved something that I don't think any other lithium mine in the world is capable of currently achieving. And I think, as I said earlier, the idea of your raw materials being congruent with the ambitions of what the final product is a huge differentiator, because if you're mining somewhere in Africa and you're processing it in a polluted region in Asia and then shipping it across another 3,000-4,000 miles to the United States to your end user, it's basically you're in conflict, and the consumer is no longer okay with that. The consumer today has much higher demand standards than that they might have had a generation previously.
Let's talk about your business model. How do you make money?
I think look, at the end of the day, like I said, if you just do the math, we're now at the nexus of a once in a century pivot in the industrialized world. This is like when the railroads, the canals. This is the next great adventure in the industrialized world, where a complete electrification. At the end of the day, when you look at 1.4 billion cars, the United States alone has 287 million. Throw in Canada, you're over 300 million cars. It's 10 kilos per car. And you take that into account and what that's going to look like. The numbers are astronomical. So I can't tell you today what the exact what the forecast is on the revenue stream, but I can tell you that the demand is not the issue. The issue today is being able to deliver and accelerate our execution on our strategy.
What further developments and objectives can investors expect within the next year?
Craig, we are now firmly on the path of effectively eliminating all the obstacles in our way towards the execution on production. So that really includes the environmental issues. We know that we've already engaged to start dealing with that, to start getting our permitting underway, to start getting the permitting underway for the ultimately for the construction of the mine. We are at the same time we're running concurrent processes where we're also going to expand the resource. We have a drilling program that we're scheduling now for this winter. We have drone surveys so we can better understand. We've only explored about 3% of our footprint up in Manitoba. So we have a lot of work to do on the resource itself, but at the same time, we're going for all the other processes to get established green lights ahead of us on this road. So we have the PFS that we're going to kick off in the first quarter of next year. We are going to kick off the metallurgical to get a better understanding from where we are today to understand how we get to the hydroxide. All of these processes are going to be running on parallel courses concurrently, and we're going to try to accelerate them to the best of our ability.
Phil, let's finish up with the essential value proposition. Why should investors take an interest in Snow Lake Lithium today?
We're not talking about electric cars anymore as a concept or as an ambition. We're actually over the precipice now. We're cascading down the falls. This is happening. This is here. This is now. And the supply does not exist. Where is it going to come from? How are we going to sustain this? And you have to keep in mind that the major automobile manufacturers are going to find themselves in an absolute spiral race to be able to achieve their market share, because they can't take for granted the idea that their combustion engine market share will remain the same when they go to electric. These are factors that I think it's not just a differentiation, but it's a game changer. I don't think we can solve the crisis that's looming, but I think that we can certainly be a part of that. And keeping in mind that over the past 70 years, we've had a huge amount of geopolitical entanglements in the Middle East because of our dependence on fossil fuel, and we're now going to pivot that and find ourselves in an Asian crisis. And I can't be putting that too lightly, because I think lithium is, and nickel and cobalt probably as well, but lithium certainly, because lithium is just almost an immature metal compared to the other ones, which have been mined for decades, whereas lithium has been an unloved commodity, if you will. So I think we're going to find ourselves entangled in this, in the geopolitics, and we're going to find ourselves looking at some of the extractive methods that are used for a lot of the lithium in the world today, and trying to compare it. When you're trying to achieve decarbonization compared to our renewable sources, you're looking at what I believe is one of the greatest value propositions in the electric lithium market today.
It is truly a compelling story, Phil, and you tell it with a lot of enthusiasm. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate your time.